Good day, everybody. I'm Sara Lenzi from the Center for Design at Northeastern University in Boston, and together with Paolo Ciuccarelli, who's founder and director of the center, I have the pleasure to talk with you today about the sonification of data, and in particular, the sonification of COVID-19 cases for this edition of Outlier 2022. So as we know, the intricacies of our world are constantly increasing. The volume and complexity of the data we produce and manage keeps growing. The network of actors we relate to in our everyday life is expanding beyond humans to include other living creatures, but also artificial intelligences and anything in between, basically, such as, in fact, viruses. As designers, we are called to think more in terms of systems than products, and in terms of networks of relationships that involve products, services, and human and non-human users. We now tend to design in terms of global experiences in which all sensory modalities collaborate, as one only sensory modality would not be enough to manage and experience complexity. Sound is growing its presence beyond music, and also beyond the beeps and clicks of traditional interfaces we are used to become a means for the representation and communication of large data sets. We, too, as sound designers, are starting to think in terms of global sonic experiences, in which sound conveys both an informative and functional content and an emotional one. Which is anyway exactly what happens in our everyday life, if you think of it. We live continuously immersed in a soundscape that is extremely complex, and still we are able to decode it in real time, as we do, for instance, when we hear and at the same time we decode, we understand voices in different languages. We hear cars and we understand whether they are accelerating or decelerating, whether they are approaching or moving away from us. We hear heavy things falling from construction sites, and we do understand what event caused the sound. We hear the occasional bird and we can locate it in a forest. So in all of these occurrences, we are able to identify which sound is important, which sound is funny, which sound is annoying, what caused it, where they're coming from. All these characteristics of sound are what we basically leverage when we do data sonification, when we use specific sound contents or specific acoustic dimensions to represent data or parameters in a data set. So sonification was born mainly in the scientific domain as a method for the analysis of scientific data. But it has grown, and today it is gaining momentum as a tool in the hand of data visualization designers, digital humanities scholars, for instance, data journalists, artists. They use it to communicate complex phenomena to a general public and to engage the audience on socially relevant issues. And the Center for Design, we launched exactly 1 year ago the Data Sonification Archive. Let me share my screen. The Data Sonification Archive is reachable at sonification.design. It hosts currently 353 cases. It is a curated collection that was born mainly to map what is going on in the world of sonification. We wanted to know who uses it, why, to communicate what, and to whom. Anyone can submit a case, and then we will later categorize the case according to topics, goals, users, use of sound together with other media. As I mentioned, we have at the moment 353 cases, and of this, 24 are dedicated to represent in various ways topics related to COVID-19. Of these 24 sonifications, about half of them are related to epidemiology. Authors sonified data related to the spread of COVID in the world, the number of COVID cases, the number of deaths, And in terms of goal, authors mainly wanted to communicate to the general public the urgency of this unprecedented situation, the collective tragedy behind the growing numbers. Two examples from this set. The first is a project, quite an early project, as it dates back to 2020, after the very first wave in Italy. Is by the sound artist Caledon Frame. It is a web project which streams data from the database of the Johns Hopkins University, which was at the time the most reliable source. And the data are both sonified and visualized, with the goal mainly of helping visitors make sense of such an unattainable phenomenon. Let's start the experience. The author uses abstract sounds that both raise in pitch and grows in intensity and in density, so that the listener have a sensation of growing chaos. And the idea is that this will help us situate ourselves in the context of something going out of control, data going out of control, growing so much that we can't really understand what's going on. Second case is more recent. It's by the it's by the designer Simon Huviller. It's an interesting case as the sonification is part of a sonic artifact, a music box, in which the mechanism to produce the sounds reads a score, which is made by a visualization of the death rate. Is this blue line that you see growing in Switzerland in the first and second wave. So the music box sonifies the same data. There is a note, one note per day that represents the number of cases. It creates a melody, and then there is a continuum, like a bass note, that gives the listener the idea of time passing by. There are 3 cases out of the 24 cases that we have that use sonification as a tool for scientific research on the biology of the COVID virus. I will show you the real-time audio and visual display of the COVID-19 genome by Mark Temple. It's an interesting case that it uses a not so common sonification technique. It's called model sonification. And in the model sonification, the user interacts with a system, with a sonification tool, and it is through this interaction that the sonification is created. This is an online project. The visitor can select different elements of the genome in the first row, and this will highlight corresponding elements in the other rows and also sonify, highlight them musically. The author uses musical sounds, so the resulting soundscape is a composition of the COVID genome. Last relevant group of cases is dedicated to the changes in the urban soundscape during COVID-19 and mostly during the global lockdown of 2020. So authors of these projects recorded sounds during and after lockdown in their cities and later used these sounds as raw data for an analysis of how the stop to virtually all human activity changed the soundscape of our cities. These projects were carried out all over the world, from Amsterdam to Boston, Bilbao, Guadeloupe, Seville, London, Milan. They use a sonification technique called audification, in which the data is what we hear. So the author only magnifies it through different techniques to make it audible. So sound is the raw data. I play a short excerpt from the Amsterdam project, where we can hear the soundscape, the very quiet soundscape of a deserted Amsterdam train station. You can find all the cases on the Sonification archive, again, sonification.design. You can either click on the tag or search through the search engine of the website. And now, Paolo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sara. Well, the Data Sonification Archive and the research on data sonification we are doing here at Northeastern University. By the way, I'm Paolo Ciuccarelli, founding director of the Center for Design and professor of design here, are part of a broader effort to expand the knowledge about the potential range of transformations that designers can apply to data and what role design can consistently play across all of them. We believe that the inherent complexity of the global challenges we are asked to face, as Sara mentioned earlier, calls for a more realistic approach to design on two connected levels. First, in terms of what we design, it's less and less about designing a single touch point or a single artifact, and more about designing experiences. With some of the new stakeholders in the arena, you really need to guide them through a journey with an articulation of different moments that can lead to making sense of data, understanding, and acting. More often than not, this is a system of touch points that have to use different modalities and languages to play different roles and functions within that journey. On a second level, especially with non-expert stakeholders, we need to create a deeper bond with the data and the phenomenon behind it, especially if we want them to stand up and take action to react to what they understand. Experiments like the info poetry exercise that I started at the Density Design Lab in Politecnico di Milano revealed how complementing the visual with forms of representation that touch other senses, like the physical or the audible, can activate the level of engagement you need in order to trigger some kind of reaction. We basically learned how emotion and cognitions are strongly connected and how sound can play a role in that connection. For this holistic approach in designing with data and information, we refer to the concept of data embodiment, meaning the creation of a connection between people and the data that speaks to their experience of the world. And that's something that inevitably has to do with us being situated in the world here and now with our full body, not only our sight, our hearing, or our touch, but all of them integrated. That's why, in parallel to the Data Sonification Archive, the Center for Design incubated another initiative with a very similar intention, the creation of a shared public repository of cases, curated in this case by Paul Kahn and Hugh Dabberley, It contains all the data visualizations produced by both media outlet and scientific publications about COVID-19. So we have two different ways of exploring the same phenomenon, a complex phenomenon, with two different languages, visualization and sonification. COVID, this repository of visualizations about COVID-19, it's an incredibly rich resource for students and researchers of all disciplines, not just design and data visualization or information design. Everyone interested in the phenomenon can really learn about the issues and the limitations of representing such a complex phenomenon through data visualization and information design. Here is COVID-19 online visualization collection. It contains 3,000 articles with more than 10,000 figures about COVID-19 and its evolution from more than 70 different countries and more than 30 different languages. You can go to the visualizer and browse the entire collection and use the filters that have been implemented from source type, commercial, government, independent media, NGO, and the peer-reviewed publications, social media posts as well. You have all the countries and the languages that can be used as filters, and of course, the visualization types or the visual patterns that have been used to visualize data on COVID-19, from some of the most common visual patterns to some maybe less common. And then you can choose visualization techniques like small multiples, often used to visualize topics, complex topics that have an evolution in time. And then also the interaction techniques. We hope that offering through the Center for Design and these two public and open resources, the Data Sonification Archive and the COVID collection, the possibility to combine the analysis of both sonification and visualization projects on the same complex topic, COVID-19, can empower students and researchers and professionals in thinking more holistically about data transformations and the role of design in it. Thank you very much for attending our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about the two archives and the research we're doing on data sonification. Thank you.